I practice gratitude. I choose love. I pray with faith. I express myself with authenticity. I believe in community. I am a daughter. I am a friend you can confide in. My best friend is my work. I am an author. I am a mental and emotional health practitioner with a degree of PGDIC, certified in psychotherapy, rational emotive behavior therapy, applied transactional analysis, and breathwork for emotional well-being. I served as a human resource leader, presently founder of Dineessha Emotional Healing Foundation, 29 plus years of professional experience. My greatest qualification is not only what I studied, it is what I have lived. Trauma deepened my compassion. Healing became my purpose. Welcome to Dineessha Emotional Healing Foundation. In our previous episode, we spoke about love as an emotion, especially about romantic love. But today, I want to bring the conversation a little closer to our home. Again, love as an emotion, but not about who you love, not about who loves you, but about the relationship you have with yourself. Because, before we ask, will someone love me? Perhaps there is another question we need to ask, and that is, do I know how to love myself? And when I say self-love, I'm not talking about, just looking good, shopping, or taking a holiday, or simply standing in front of a mirror and, saying that, I'm amazing. Well, that is also self-love, but that's not what truly it actually means. It's much more broader. Self-love is much deeper in that case. It is more, it is about, how we think about ourselves, how we speak to ourselves, the choices we make, the boundaries we create, the way we handle mistakes, and of course, how comfortable we are in our own company. For those who are new to my channel, my name is Pinky Kansara, the founder of Dineessha Emotional Healing Foundation. So let us begin. In my profession, when someone comes to us, regularly in the counseling or for therapy, we don't hear one incident and immediately arrive at a conclusion. We ask questions, we listen, we understand history, we look at patterns and context. And sometimes, in fact, with consent and where appropriate and required, we may also need to understand the perspective of family members in that case. Well, why? Because human behavior is very complex. One incident, rarely tells us the whole story of a person or what that person's behavior is all about, and yet people can be remarkably quick to create stories about others. Someone hears one sentence or sees one incident or reads one post and suddenly they believe they know the entire story about that person. I mean, that really amazes me. Recently, there was news about a psychiatrist, reportedly giving up her life. Almost immediately, social media was filled with speculations. This was really sad when we were discussing this within the fraternity. People started saying she was depressed, that she couldn't handle her divorce, or questioning if a psychiatrist couldn't help herself, how can we as normal people help ourselves? And I kept wondering, how do we really know what was the matter? Did she tell us, either of us? Did we even know her complete circumstances? Did we know what she was experiencing privately? Did we know what was happening to her internally? No. And this is where, this is where we really need to pause, because being a mental health professional does not make someone immune to being human. We are professionals, yes, but we are also people. We experience grief, disappointment, uncertainty, and of course, difficult experiences and struggle at the same time. Our professional knowledge definitely gives us tools, but it does not, give us the immunity from life and the emotional distress. And it kind of, really surprises us, because we take so many sessions to assess, the real problem of somebody, and out here we judge someone's life in just a fraction of seconds. Rather than giving empathy and trying to understand, and that maybe this should not occur again, we just conclude and we jump to judgments for no reason. In fact, you have to ask yourself, doesn't a surgeon ever fall ill? Doesn't a gym or fitness trainer ever have any health issues? or does a medical doctor does not suffer any kind of illness? So why have this, a mindset when it comes to mental health professionals, that they cannot struggle with their own, complications, or with their own regulation of emotions at times? In fact, sometimes, the professional identity of us, it can become a barrier also. We may think, how can I ask for help? I'm a therapist. We may believe I should know, or, I should have all the answers, or, we may even worry that, what will people think? This is why I strongly believe, in any profession, a title should never become so strong that we stop ourselves from showing a vulnerability where required. Behind the most competent person in the room may simply be another, human being trying to cope. And that brings me to today's topic, self-love. So what is self-love? When someone is suffering deeply, we often want just one simple, we come to a conclusion of one simple reason. Was it any kind of relationship? Was it the divorce? Was it financial pressure? Was it family? Was it loneliness? But psychological suffering is, rarely that simple. There can be, several layers of grief, shame, guilt, financial pressure, loneliness, prolonged emotional pain, unprocessed experiences, loss of identity, or simply feeling disconnected from your own self. And sometimes beneath all of these layers, we may have made something outside ourselves the primary the primary source of our self-worth, also of our identity, safety, or belonging. It could be a person, it could be a profession, it could be money, it could be appearance, it could be status, it could be achievement, or it could be approval. And when that external source changes, our entire sense of self can be shaken. That is where self-love becomes important. Not as a hashtag, and not as a beauty routine, not simply as, treat yourself, but more of a, psychological relationship with yourself. So today I want to look at, let's say self-love through 5, dimensions. First of all, to start with, self-acceptance, self-worth, self-respect, and let's say self-respect with boundaries, emotional independence, and self-investment. Self-love begins with self-acceptance, and self-acceptance does not mean anywhere that I have no flaws. It means I can see my flaws without making them my entire identity. You make a mistake and you can say, I made a mistake. What can I learn? Or you can also say, I always mess up things. I am useless. One evaluates the behavior, whereas the other one attacks the person. And this is the distinction which really matters. We often turn an experience into a statement about who we are. I failed becomes I am a failure. I made a wrong choice becomes I always make bad choices. I need to improve becomes something is wrong with me. Well, we take an experience and turn it into an identity for ourselves, and we try to we try to say, in fact, self-love actually means I can hold myself accountable without humiliating myself. I can recognize what needs to change without, making myself the enemy. I can very well say, that this part of me needs to, needs work, without saying there is, something fundamentally wrong with me. That is called self-acceptance. Now let us come to the second point, self-worth. Well, it's all about validation. We all like appreciation, absolutely. I mean, it's human nature. We all like to be acknowledged. We like appreciation. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. The problem begins, when appreciation becomes necessary for our sense of worth. Let's think about, let's give an example about, let's say, social media only. One post gets hundreds of likes and we feel good. Another gets, let's say, few responses, and suddenly we question ourselves. But you need to ask for yourself this one question each time. Did we change as a person? No. The external responses changed, and yet our internal evaluation of ourselves also changes with that. So ask yourself, if nobody validated me today, would I still know my worth? Self-love means, developing an internal sense of worth, not believing that everyone must value me, but understanding, that someone's inability to value me does not automatically reduce my value anywhere. And it's okay if people don't like you. Not everybody has to like us, and they would have their own reasons for it. And this and that is why this connects with people pleasing, because if I constantly say yes because I'm afraid someone will be disappointed with me, or maybe if I suppress my opinion because I need approval, or if I keep doing things I don't want to do also just to maintain harmony, I need to definitely ask myself, am I being kind, or am I just moving away from myself to keep everyone comfortable? That is a question definitely you need to ask yourself, because kindness is beautiful, but losing yourself in the process of being light is something altogether different thing. Now let's come to the third point, self-respect and boundaries. This is where self-love becomes visible through behavior. What are you repeatedly tolerating? Is it disrespect, constant criticism, manipulation, are you being taken for granted? Or let's say having your own boundaries ignored, or simply being in situations where you continuously feel that your needs don't matter. Well, sometimes we call this adjustment, but there is a difference between a healthy compromise and self-neglect. And this is something that you need to understand and draw boundaries, because that's very essential for yourself, because a boundary is not a punishment. It is not controlling another person, of course not. It is respecting the other person, respecting yourself at the same time. It is knowing what you are willing to participate in and what you are not ready to participate into. Sometimes you simply need to just say no. Sometimes you need to just say that I cannot take this on right now. Sometimes you need to say, I am not comfortable with this conversation. Let's speak when we can do it respectfully and peacefully. Self-love also means learning to speak your heart. Not every thought needs to be expressed impulsively, but your feelings needs that let's say your feelings, needs and concerns deserve healthy expression, because when we constantly suppress ourselves to maintain peace, we may create peace outside while creating a lot of frustration inside us. You don't always have to agree with everything. You don't always have to explain yourself endlessly, and you don't have to make everyone comfortable at all time. Not required, and not at your cost, for definitely not. This brings us to the fourth aspect, emotional independence. Human beings definitely need connection. We cannot deny that. We all need love, care, support. We need relationships. So self-love doesn't mean that I don't need anyone. No, my dear. Healthy emotional independence sounds more like, I can say, I can, deeply value people without making them, responsible for my entire emotional world. Someone else's mood doesn't always have to, become your mood. Someone else's opinion doesn't have to become your identity. Or let's say someone else's success also doesn't have to, become evidence of your failure. That's not how you compare. You can, you can definitely care without caring everything. You can, support someone without making their emotions your responsibility. That's what we need to understand at all times, that others' emotions are not our responsibility at times, at all times. And this is where solitude becomes very important, because you have a world without people also. Solitude is not loneliness, which we all know about, although I will definitely cover up a different episode on solitude at some point. But for now, just for us to understand, that you have to ask, that can you really sit alone, without immediately reaching out for your phone? Can you have a meal alone with yourself? Can you really go out for a walk alone? Can you spend an evening with yourself? Can you go on a date with yourself? Can you really enjoy your own company? Because there is something very powerful about being able to say, I enjoy being with people, and I also enjoy being with myself. Can you really connect with yourself? Or are you just constantly looking for connections outside of you? That is called self connection, and this is something perhaps many of us don't consciously learn. We learn to perform. we learn how to achieve, we learn how to communicate, we also learn how to build relationships. We take advice from others, but how often do we learn how to simply be with ourselves? This brings the fifth aspect, the final one, which we call as self-investment. You just need to ask yourself now, what do I love apart from people? Anytime we say love, we think about people, right? What makes you really curious? At times you have to ask yourself, what do you enjoy learning? What makes you lose track of time at times? What gives you some kind of purpose? But if your entire emotional world only revolves around people, well, you become vulnerable to their moods, their choices, their availability to be there with you, and of course their decisions. But when you have something that belongs to you, you create other sources of meaning for yourself. Your profession, it could be it could be music, it could be writing, it could be art, it could be nature, it could also be animals, it could be learning, it could also be spirituality for some people, it could be some kind of social work, it could be some passion, or maybe just a purpose of life. Whatever it is, find something that belongs to you, and this is where I want to share something personal with all of you. So I'll share my own experience, rather my own realization, if I can say that. Very recently, I was talking to my sister, and because she's witnessed my life very closely, and we were talking about that in my 29 years of professional life, I don't remember coming home even once a single day and complaining to my family about my work or my workload or how tired I am. Well, that doesn't mean that everything was ever easy for me. No, I worked in very high pressure, senior roles, made constant decisions, handled like really difficult conversations, and yet, I've always stood by my opinion and my voice, which I'm known for. I also realized that across all the 3 organizations that I had worked with, I was the one who had created the department I was leading. It was only when I sat back and reflected that I noticed this pattern. But my relationship with my work was never dependent on any organization or any people. There was something more organic about the whole thing. I genuinely loved what I did. And even today, I can immerse myself in my work and almost forget the world around me. In fact, many times my family and my close friends sometimes have to practically kidnap my time to get me away from it. And that made me realize that my work became one of the things I belonged to. It was not my source of earning money, or it was not my passion, or it was nothing related to my identity anywhere, And perhaps we all need, more things in our life that we belong to, not just people to love, but something that gives us meaning and purpose. Because, for someone, let's say it may be work, it could be music, it could be passion, it could be social work, whatever we call it out. But so ask yourself, what gives my life meaning beyond people? Because it is okay, it's absolutely good to have people around, but at some point, people will change, people will move out of your life, whether it is personal or it is professional. In your difficult times, what is it you're going to really hold on to? And that time you'll realize, that something which was out of people, that you need to build something for yourself that will stay with you as your companion, as your as a source of something which brings you happiness. It doesn't give you stress. Another very important aspect of self-love, which I'll take you a little away from a psychological world and move towards spirituality, because we all exist beyond facts, figures, or roles and labels. When you entered this world, you didn't you didn't come with a job title, you didn't come with a bank balance, not a house, not a degree, not social media following. All of these were added later to our life. They are layers of your life, but sometimes we confuse the layers with the person underneath. If let's say if you lose a job, you lose, you have lost employment. Yes, you did not lose your ability to contribute. If let's say if you lose money, yes, you lost financial resources, but you did not lose your human worth. If you lose a title, you definitely, it's a loss of your designation, but you did not lose your identity, and perhaps self-love is learning to separate who I am from what I have, and asking, who am I really beyond everything the world has added to me? And that is when anything is taken away from you, or when you lose anything, you realize that it is not about your identity, it is not about your self-worth. Your soul is far beyond to all these attachments which are there, with which you have, which we call ourselves with our, we attach with our identity. So let's come down to the last point, that is going to be your this week's self-love exercise. I want you to take a piece of paper or maybe a notebook and write 5 things. First, let's say the self-acceptance. What are the 3 things you accept about yourself, and what are the 3 things you are let's say you're working on? For example, perhaps you accept that you are very caring and responsible, but you also recognize that you need to work on being less critical of yourself, or being able to say no. Secondly, let's come to self-worth. Try to complete this sentence for yourself. Even when nobody praises me or validates me, I still know that I am dash dash dash. For example, you could add to that I am capable, worthy and valuable even when nobody notices what I do. Third one, let's come to the boundaries. Ask yourself, where am I saying yes when I actually want to say no? That's very simple. I don't need to give you an example. The fourth one, solitude. Intentionally try to spend some time alone this week with yourself. No phone, no scrolling. Just you. Notice yourself. That, and ask yourself, can I really enjoy my own company? Last one, the fifth one. Ask yourself, what do I love? Not who or what I love, but you don't need to ask who I love, but what do I love? And does that really give me that kind of curiosity and purpose? And that again, it could be many things, which the options have already sounded earlier to you. Something in which you lose track of your time altogether. So choose one thing this week that belongs entirely to you, and finally ask yourself, if everything outside me changed, what would still be mine? Don't be frightened by that question. Use it only for your self-awareness, because the answer can tell you where your sense of self currently lives. How do you really look for your, what really makes you believe that that you practice self-love. So let us conclude about self-love. Self-love is just not about looking good and looking after your outer appearance. Of course, it matters. It does. How you look also definitely matters. It's a presentation of your self-love, but that's not essentially what self-love is all about. It is much beneath the layers of them. How much you accept yourself with your imperfections, the boundaries that you draw for yourself. When your heart wants to say no, are you being able to say no? Are you being able to ask for help when you need to? Can you continue to grow without constantly attacking yourself? And most importantly, you need to ask yourself, I don't want to lose myself in the process of living my life. I can love people, build meaningful relationships, create family, of course dream big, achieve what I want to, give to others, and of course care deeply. But somewhere in all of it, I also need to remember myself. I need to know that what matters to me, what gives me meaning, what I stand for, and what I need to remain connected to myself. Because when you know how to come back to yourself, you can love from a place of wholeness rather than emptiness. And perhaps that is the kind of love we were meant to learn first. And I want to leave you with one final, let's say final thought. Stop complaining and saying that nobody really loves me. Well, instead ask yourself, do I know how to love, respect and stand beside my own self? And perhaps when you begin to find that answer within yourself, you will also start noticing the many people who love you, simply for who you are, not what you bring to the table, not for your titles, not for how much you do for them, and not and definitely not for how well you please them. No, my dear, because don't forget, you are not alone. There are people like you who also long to be loved simply for who they are. It could be a handful of people, of course, you can actually count them on the fingers, but you will find those people around you. Love doesn't always need to be loud. Sometimes it is, simply, it just needs to be simply, felt within yourself. And I feel blessed to have, very few, but, such good people around me to have, who just love me simply for the person that I am. And I sincerely, wish that this blessing is there in the lives of each one of you. I'll see you in the next episode. Till then, stay well and yes, keep spreading love all over.